The first time Victoria Slade saw Nathan Cole's scanner, she asked whether it came free with a children's science kit. It sat in his palm, small enough to look harmless, scratched across the edges, with a cracked display protected by clear tape and a red wire taped along the side where the original casing had broken years earlier. The label on the back had faded until only 3 letters remained. A tiny green light blinked near the corner each time the sensor touched metal. Nathan stood beside the south assembly line of Astron Dynamics, wearing a faded gray work shirt, safety boots, and the calm expression of a man who had already heard worse from people who knew less. His 7-year-old daughter Emma sat on a folding chair near the maintenance office, holding a notebook against her chest. On the first page, in purple pencil, she had written, "Dad hears machines." Around them stood 8 senior engineers, 2 visiting investors, the plant director and Victoria Slade herself. Behind Victoria, the machine rose like a steel wall. Astron called it the Titan Forming Press, though most people in the factory simply called it Titan. It was 3 stories tall, 180 feet long, and built to shape aerospace-grade titanium housings with pressure measured in numbers too large for ordinary imagination. It had cost $90 million to purchase, install, calibrate, and certify. It was the centerpiece of a new manufacturing contract that could turn Astron Dynamics from a regional supplier into a national force. And Nathan Cole was standing in front of it with a $50 scanner he had bought from a closing repair shop. Victoria looked from the scanner to Nathan. "You are telling me that thing found a problem my certified inspection team missed?" Nathan did not raise his voice. "I am telling you the vibration pattern is wrong." One of the visiting engineers smiled. Victoria laughed once, clean and bright, the kind of laugh that gave others permission to follow. "Nathan, this is not an old washing machine in someone's basement. This is a $90 million precision forming system. It has factory sensors, load monitors, thermal mapping, structural diagnostics, and 6 engineers who went to school longer than that scanner has existed." Several people laughed. Emma looked down at her notebook. Nathan kept his eyes on the machine. "Then one of them should listen to Bearing Tower 3. Victoria's smile faded slightly. "I appreciate caution. What I do not appreciate is a maintenance technician delaying a launch because a toy made a noise." Nathan finally looked at her. "It is not the noise that worries me." "Then what is it?" "The silence after it." 4 hours later, the same machine would tear itself halfway through a dry cycle test, forcing an emergency shutdown that shook the concrete floor and sent every engineer in the room running toward the panel Nathan had warned them about. Victoria Slade would stand beneath the alarm lights, staring at a hairline crack spreading across the main rotor housing of her $90 million machine, while the only person who had found it before failure was the single father she had mocked in front of his daughter. Astron Dynamics was not an ordinary factory. It built high-strength structural components for aircraft, emergency vehicles, medical imaging platforms, and defense contractors who disliked delays almost as much as they disliked surprises. The plant sat on 42 acres outside Meridian City, a clean rectangle of steel, glass, and controlled noise. Trucks entered through the north gate. Engineers entered through the east lobby. Workers entered through a turnstile near the parking lot where coffee cups, lunch bags, and fatigue passed through every morning before sunrise. The factory's newest wing had been built around Titan. The press was more than equipment. It was a promise to investors, clients, and competitors. With Titan online, Astron could produce parts faster, stronger, and with fewer subcontractors than anyone in the region. The first contract tied to it was worth $300 million over 5 years. If the launch succeeded, Victoria would become the CEO who transformed Astron. If it failed, she would become the woman who bet the company on a machine before it was ready. Victoria Slade did not fail publicly. At 35, she had already survived more boardroom doubt than most people recognized. Her father had founded Asterin, but Victoria had kept it alive after his stroke. She cut waste, negotiated hard, fired comfortable managers, and pushed the company into advanced manufacturing while older executives told her she was moving too quickly. She was brilliant, disciplined, and exhausting to work for. She respected data. The problem was that she had developed a habit of respecting only data that arrived dressed correctly. Nathan Scanner did not. Nathan Cole had joined Asterin 9 months earlier as a night shift maintenance technician. On paper, he was overqualified in a way that made human resources suspicious. Before Asterin, he had worked for a failure analysis firm that investigated industrial accidents after things went wrong. He studied cracks, stress patterns, rotor failures, fractured housings, overheated bearings, and the tiny warning signs that had been ignored before steel turned violent. He left that job after refusing to soften a report. A manufacturing client had pushed a machine past its safe cycle limit to meet a delivery deadline. The machine failed, injuring 2 workers. Nathan's report named the cause clearly. His supervisor asked him to revise the language so the client's responsibility sounded less direct. Nathan refused. The report went out unchanged. The client ended the contract. Nathan was let go 6 weeks later during what the company called restructuring. By then, his wife, Mara, had already been sick for 2 years. Medical bills had eaten savings. Hospital parking had eaten sleep. Grief had eaten whatever remained after Mara died on a rainy Thursday morning, while Emma was still learning to spell the word hospital. Nathan stopped chasing titles after that. He needed steady hours, health insurance, school pickups, and enough money to keep their small apartment warm. Asterin offered night work. He took it. Most people at the plant knew him as quiet, not unfriendly, just careful with words. He fixed conveyor motors, replaced sensors, rewired panels, and wrote notes in a black pocket notebook. He ate lunch alone unless Emma visited after school, which happened more often than he liked and less often than he feared. Emma liked the factory because she said machines were honest. Nathan had told her that once. Machines are honest if you listen long enough. The scanner began as a joke from an old machinist named Reuben. Reuben sold Nathan a box of broken tools from a repair shop liquidation for $50. Inside was the scanner, originally meant for pipe inspection and surface vibration checks. The screen barely worked. The battery was dead. The sensor head was cracked. Nathan rebuilt it at night. He replaced the power supply, added a better contact probe, wrote a small program on an old tablet to translate the signal, and trained the system using thousands of readings from healthy and failing parts. It was not beautiful. It was not certified. It did not create polished reports, but it detected micro-vibration patterns in metal that most built-in systems ignored because those systems were designed to avoid false alarms. Nathan did not mind false alarms. False alarms were embarrassing. Missed warnings buried people. On the morning of Titan's launch review, Emma's school called at 6:20. A water main had broken near the building. Classes were canceled. Nathan called 2 neighbors. One was out of town. One had a shift at the hospital. The third did not answer. Emma stood in the kitchen with her backpack on, watching him calculate the day. "I can sit in the office," she said. "You should not have to sit in a factory all day. I like the big machine. You like the vending machine. I like both." Nathan looked at the clock. If he missed the launch inspection, he would not be there when Titan ran its final dry cycle. He had already noticed something strange during late-night calibration checks, not enough to stop the machine officially, enough to worry him. He packed Emma's notebook, headphones, and 2 granola bars. When they arrived, the plant was already different. More suits, more polished shoes, more people looking at their reflections in clean glass. The investors had come to watch Titan complete final validation before full production approval. Victoria Slade walked the floor as if every bolt answered to her. Nathan began his check at bearing Tower 3. The first reading was small. A narrow vibration cut at the end of a load pulse, followed by a drop so clean it felt unnatural. He moved the scanner 2 inches and tried again. The pattern repeated. He checked Tower 2. Normal. Tower 1. Normal. Tower 3 again. There it was. A tiny interruption. A silence after stress. He ran the scanner along the housing seam. The green light flickered, then steadied. The tablet graph showed an irregular trace shaped like a heartbeat skipping once. Ruben, now retired but visiting for the launch, stood beside him with a paper coffee cup. "You found something." "Maybe. Good maybe or bad maybe." Nathan looked up at Titan. The kind people get angry about. At 8:40, he asked the plant director, Malcolm Reed, to place a hold on the dry cycle test until Tower 3 could be inspected manually. Malcolm respected Nathan more than he admitted, but he had spent the morning being squeezed between engineers, executives, and schedule pressure. "Based on what?" Nathan showed him the graph. Malcolm frowned. "That thing again." The pattern repeated 4 times. "Built-in sensors show clean. They are measuring broad vibration. This is localized." "Can you prove a crack?" "No." "Then what are you asking for?" 4 hours, open the panel, dye test the seam, check the rotor housing under magnification. Malcolm rubbed his forehead. "Today?" "Yes." "You understand who is upstairs?" "Yes." "You understand what a 4-hour delay looks like?" Nathan closed the scanner case. "Better than a failure." Malcolm took the concern to Victoria, because the launch had become too visible for him to pause quietly. That was how Nathan ended up standing in front of her, the scanner in his palm, while executives and engineers watched him become a problem. Victoria did not know Nathan well. She knew he had a clean attendance record, strong night shift notes, and a reputation for being difficult only when machines were involved. She also knew that Titan had already passed manufacturer certification, third-party inspection, load simulation, and thermal mapping. She knew investors were waiting. She knew clients expected the first production schedule by Friday. What she saw in Nathan's hand did not look like a reason to stop. It looked like fear wearing confidence. So she laughed. After dismissing him, she ordered the final dry cycle to proceed. Nathan was told to document his concern and remain available. That meant stand down. Emma found him near the maintenance office a few minutes later. "Are they mad?" "No." "Are they pretending not to be mad?" He looked at her. "You are getting too good at that." She opened her notebook and showed him a drawing of Titan with a small crack drawn as a lightning bolt. "I drew what you said." Nathan crouched beside her. "I did not say crack. You said silence, but I can't draw silence." He looked at the drawing longer than he expected to. Then he said, "That is close enough." At 10:15, the dry cycle began. Titan woke slowly, motors engaged, hydraulic systems pressurized. The floor vibrated with deep mechanical authority. Yellow safety lights spun along the perimeter. Engineers stood behind the marked line with tablets. Investors watched from a glass viewing platform. Victoria stood at the center of the floor, arms folded, expression composed. Nathan stood near the maintenance station with Emma, behind the safety barrier. The first cycle passed. The second cycle passed. Grant Phelps, the lead manufacturer engineer, gave Victoria a small nod. The third cycle began with increased load. Nathan heard the difference before the monitors showed anything. Not a bang, not a scrape, a missing note inside the rhythm. He stepped forward. Malcolm saw him and shook his head slightly, warning him not to interrupt. Nathan looked at Tower 3. The scanner reading had been a whisper. Now the machine was speaking louder. At 10:27, a vibration warning flashed yellow, then vanished. The built-in system labeled it transient. Grant said, "Normal settling." Nathan moved before asking permission. He grabbed the emergency handheld microphone near the maintenance panel. "Shut down the dry cycle." Every head turned. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Grant snapped, "Who authorized that?" Nathan said into the mic, "Tower 3 housing is unstable. Shut it down." The machine entered the next load pulse. A sound cracked through the hall. This time everyone heard it. It was not explosion. Not yet. It was the sound of metal accepting more than it wanted and announcing that the agreement was ending. The floor trembled. A red fault appeared across the main panel. The press arm stopped halfway through its motion. The emergency system triggered, hydraulic pressure venting in a long, violent hiss. Workers stepped back. One investor cursed. Emma covered her ears. Victoria looked toward Tower 3. A hairline split had opened along the rotor housing seam, visible now beneath the inspection light, dark against the silver housing. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then the factory became noise. Engineers ran. Malcolm shouted for lockout procedure. Grant demanded diagnostic readouts. The safety officer cleared the viewing platform. The machine settled into emergency hold with a groan that made every person in the room understand how much force had almost continued moving. Nathan did not run toward the crack. He ran toward Emma. She was still behind the safety barrier, shaking but unhurt. He crouched and touched both her shoulders. "You okay?" She nodded quickly. "You heard it?" "Yes." "Was that the silence?" "No," he said softly, "that was after." By noon, Titan was locked down. The investors had been moved to a conference room. Grant and his team examined the housing with equipment that should have been used earlier. The crack was longer than it first appeared, running beneath a support collar where it had been hidden from easy inspection. It had not opened fully until the dry cycle, but the defect had been developing under repeated calibration stress. If the machine had entered full production load, the rotor housing could have fractured violently. Nobody said that sentence loudly. They did not have to. Victoria stood near Tower 3, while Grant explained in technical terms what Nathan had warned them about in human ones. Microfracture likely originated from manufacturing stress or installation strain. Early vibration markers would have been extremely localized. Built-in sensors may not catch it until propagation. Victoria looked at the damaged housing. "May not." Grant cleared his throat. "Did not." The correction hurt more than she expected. She turned to find Nathan. He was at the edge of the floor, packing his scanner into its case with Emma beside him. People who had laughed earlier now watched him differently. Some with embarrassment, some with suspicion, some with the specific discomfort of seeing a person they had placed below them become necessary. Victoria walked over. "Mr. Cole." He closed the case. "Yes." "Can your scanner map the crack area before we open the housing?" "Yes." "Will you do it?" He looked at her. "For the machine or for the room?" The question struck harder because it was quiet. "For both," Victoria said after a moment. Nathan glanced at Emma. She gave him a tiny nod. He reopened the case. For the next 3 hours, Nathan worked while everyone watched. He mapped the damaged zone point by point, marking stress responses along the housing. His scanner fed rough graphs to the tablet, ugly but clear. Grant's certified tools confirmed each major finding after Nathan identified it. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Nathan's $50 scanner had detected the problem first because it looked for behavior, not permission. At 3:40, the full inspection report reached the conference room. Titan would be down for at least 2 weeks. The rotor housing had to be replaced or rebuilt. Production launch would be delayed. The investors were not happy. The clients would need explanations. The board would demand an incident review. But nobody was injured. And the $90 million machine could be repaired because it had been stopped before destroying itself. Victoria found Nathan in the break room at 4:15. Emma was asleep with her head on folded arms, Nathan's jacket over her shoulders. The scanner case sat on the table beside an untouched paper cup of coffee. Victoria entered without her assistant for the first time that day. Nathan stood. "She can sleep," Victoria said. He remained standing anyway. For several seconds she looked at the child. Emma's notebook lay open beside her hand. The page showed a huge machine, a tiny scanner, and 3 words written carefully beneath them. Dad heard it. Victoria looked away. "I owe you an apology." Nathan said nothing. "I dismissed your warning." "Yes." "I mocked your equipment." "Yes." "In front of your daughter." His face changed then, not dramatically but enough. "Yes." Victoria folded her hands because she did not know what else to do with them. "I am sorry." Nathan looked at Emma, then back at Victoria. "She hears more than people think." "I know." "No," Nathan said, "you know now." The words stayed between them. Victoria accepted them because they were true. "I would like to understand how your scanner works." Nathan almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. That would have been a better first question. "Yes," she said, "it would have." The next morning, Victoria called a full technical review. Every engineer connected to Titan attended. So did safety, operations, legal, finance, and 2 board members by video. Nathan expected to be blamed in some careful way. People who reveal problems often become connected to the cost of fixing them. Instead, Victoria stood at the front of the room and began with a sentence that changed the air. "Yesterday, a maintenance technician identified a structural warning our formal systems missed. I dismissed him. I was wrong." No one moved. She continued. "From this point forward, credible technical dissent at Asteron will be investigated before schedule pressure is considered. If a worker, technician, or engineer identifies a safety concern with repeatable evidence, that concern gets reviewed. It does not get laughed out of the room because the tool looks cheap or the person lacks the correct title." Grant looked down. Victoria turned to Nathan. "Mr. Cole, I am offering you a new position as Independent Failure Analysis Lead for Plant Systems. Direct reporting to Safety Review. Authority to place temporary technical holds when repeatable anomaly data supports concern. Full salary adjustment. Flexible school emergency accommodations for your daughter." Nathan did not answer quickly. Victoria seemed to expect that now. He asked who can override the hold. "Safety Director and CEO jointly." That is still a business answer. Victoria paused. What would be the correct answer? Written risk acceptance, public inside the company, name, reason, timestamp. If someone overrides a warning, they own the decision after. The room shifted. A board member frowned from the screen. That could slow operations. Nathan looked at him. "Yes." The simplicity of the answer made the objection smaller. Victoria said, "Add it to the policy." The board member started to speak. Victoria did not look away from Nathan. "Add it." Nathan accepted the position 2 days later, after reading every line of the written authority and changing 3 of them. Titan's repair became expensive and embarrassing. The manufacturer sent specialists. Asterin delayed the launch. Investors grumbled. Clients demanded revised timelines. But as the full investigation unfolded, something worse emerged. The crack had not been random. A shipment of rotor housings from a subcontractor showed inconsistent heat treatment records. Two other companies had purchased components from the same batch. One had already installed a similar unit. Asterin's incident report triggered a wider inspection that prevented another machine from entering full load with the same hidden defect. Victoria received that news in her office late on a Friday. She read the message twice, then walked to the diagnostics room where Nathan was training 3 engineers on anomaly mapping. Emma sat nearby after school, coloring quietly. She had drawn the scanner with a cape. Victoria stood in the doorway. Nathan looked up. "What happened?" "Your scanner may have prevented more than our failure." He absorbed that silently. Emma looked up. "Did Dad hear another machine?" Victoria smiled faintly. "In a way." Emma added a star above the cape. 6 months later, Asterin Dynamics opened its new failure listening lab inside the factory's technical wing. The name had not been Victoria's idea. It had been Emma, spoken during a tour when she asked why adults used boring words for important rooms. The official sign read Advanced Failure Analysis Center. Under it, someone had placed a smaller sign with Victoria's approval. "Listen before steel shouts." Nathan's old scanner sat in a glass case near the entrance, not retired, because he refused to retire tools that still worked, but displayed when not in use. Beside it was Emma's notebook page. Dad heard it. Titan returned to operation after 10 weeks, not on the original schedule, not without cost, but stronger, safer, and better understood. The first production run succeeded. The $300 million contract survived because Victoria told the clients the truth before rumor could bend it. Some executives advised against that. She ignored them. Publicly, Asterin described the incident as an example of strengthened safety culture. Privately, everyone knew it had begun with a single father, a $50 scanner, and a CEO laughing before listening. Victoria changed too, though not into someone soft. She remained demanding. She still hated wasted time. She still moved through the factory with sharp attention and sharper questions, but her questions changed. When someone brought her a concern, she no longer asked first, "Who approved this?" She asked, "Does it repeat?" That difference saved time in ways no spreadsheet measured. One afternoon, nearly a year after the failed launch, Victoria found Nathan and Emma beside Titan during a school open house tour Asterin hosted for employees' families. The machine was running demonstration cycles at safe load, smooth and controlled. Emma wore oversized safety glasses and held the scanner case with both hands as if carrying treasure. Victoria stopped beside them, still using the original. Nathan looked at the scanner. "It still listens. I could approve a full replacement budget." "You did. And yet." He lifted the battered device. "This one remembers." Victoria understood that better than she might have once. Emma looked up at her. "Miss Slade." "Yes." "Do you still think it looks like a toy?" Victoria crouched slightly, careful not to turn the answer into performance. "No, I think it looks like something I was not smart enough to respect." Emma considered that. "That is a good answer." Nathan coughed once to hide a laugh. Victoria accepted the judgment. Later that day, the factory floor filled with families. Children pointed at robots. Parents took pictures near machines they usually only saw through exhaustion. Emma stood proudly beside the glass case and explained to another child that the scanner was not magic. "It just listens very carefully," she said. Nathan heard her and looked away for a moment. Myra would have loved that. He could almost hear his wife's voice telling him that Emma had his stubbornness and her timing. He stood beneath the hum of Titan, feeling grief and gratitude occupy the same space without fighting for it. Victoria approached quietly. "I never asked about her mother," she said. Nathan's posture shifted. "No, I won't ask now unless you want to tell me." That was new too. Victoria Slade had once believed every room owed her the information she needed. She had learned that some doors opened only when not pushed. Nathan looked at Emma, who was laughing with Reuben near the display case. Her name was Mara. She believed broken things deserved diagnosis before disposal. Victoria nodded. "She sounds wise." She was usually right, which was inconvenient. Victoria smiled. "I know people like that." Nathan glanced at her. "You are learning to hire them." "Yes," she said, finally. At the end of the open house, Emma placed a new drawing on Victoria's desk. It showed Titan, the scanner, Nathan, and Victoria standing beside the machine. This time Victoria was not laughing. She was listening. Above the picture, Emma had written, "Loud Amacia Chinese need quiet people." Victoria framed it and hung it outside the boardroom. The first board member to comment on it asked whether it looked too childish for the executive wing. Victoria looked at him. "That drawing explains our safety policy better than the handbook." He did not comment again. 2 years later, Asteron's failure listening lab became one of the reasons clients trusted the company. Not because it promised perfection, but because it proved the company had learned to hear imperfection early. Nathan led a small team now. Grant, the engineer who had once laughed, became one of his strongest collaborators. Malcolm retired and told everyone the factory was safer because Nathan had made leadership less comfortable. Nathan still drove an old truck. He still packed Emma's lunch when school called early. He still kept the $50 receipt for the scanner taped inside the case because Emma said every hero needed an origin story. And Victoria still walked past the framed drawing outside the boardroom before major decisions. Sometimes she stopped. Sometimes she remembered the sound of Titan cracking through the factory air. Sometimes she remembered Nathan saying it was not the noise that worried him, but the silence after it. That sentence had changed the way she heard everything. On the anniversary of the failed launch, Asteron held no ceremony. Nathan would have hated that. Instead, Victoria approved a quiet policy update requiring every new engineer to spend 1 day in the failure listening lab before touching launch approvals. That morning, Emma visited before school. She was older now, taller, less likely to hold her father's hand in public, but she still did it when they crossed the factory floor. They stopped beside Titan. The machine moved smoothly through its cycle. No crack, no missing note, no hidden silence. Emma looked up at her father. "Does it sound okay?" Nathan listened. Really listened. Then he smiled. "Yes." Emma smiled back. Across the floor, Victoria watched them for a second before turning toward her next meeting. A supplier was late. A client wanted speed. Finance wanted compression. The old pressures remained, wearing new clothes. Victoria opened her folder, then closed it again. "Before we discuss timelines," she told the room, "show me what the machine is saying." No one laughed. No one looked at the scanner and saw a toy. No one looked at Nathan Cole and saw only a maintenance technician. And that was the quiet victory. Not that a $50 scanner had saved a $90 million machine. Not even that a single father had proven a room full of experts wrong. The real victory was that after the crack, after the alarms, after the apology, an entire company learned to listen before the warning became loud enough to hurt someone. Because sometimes the difference between disaster and survival is not the biggest system, the cleanest report, or the most expensive equipment. Sometimes it is a tired father with grease on his hands, a daughter who believes he can hear machines, and a scratched little scanner blinking green in a room full of people who almost forgot that truth does not need to look expensive to be real.